Cool, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we've ever actually met like in person. Our paths have definitely crossed a whole bunch,
Yeah.
especially when I was back in like the LA area. Yeah, I was really excited to have this call because I know there's a whole lot going on in like the funding space and the Web3 space. I want to hear kind of like what
Yeah.
you're seeing. I've got just tons of questions, honestly. What have you been up to lately?
It's really cool. I mean, the space is growing like crazy while also being in this kind of bear market, right? So it's fun because the folks who are not necessarily the true believers or the folks who are watching crypto on the sidelines or maybe only know it from the news and things like that just go by Bitcoin's price and whatever. So for this moment, Bitcoin went up a little bit, but in general, things are down. And that means there's a lot less speculation and kind of junk and tourists in the space, right? To use that kind of term that some people like to use, whatever. There just aren't the looky-loos, right? Or the people who go, ooh, this is a space with free money, so I'm going to join it. So in this moment, for me, it's like my favorite part because the people who are hanging are the super true believers, and they're building things not because they believe this is the quickest path for them to put money in their pocket, but because they believe in the idea or that it could change the world or whatever. And I love that. Like I feed off of that and get so stoked and excited. And so every meeting I have with entrepreneurs now is just so much fun. And that's why I do what I do. It's like I get to hang with entrepreneurs all day long, building cool things.
Yeah, obviously different businesses, you and I, but somewhat similar day to days as far as like just interacting with people that are building stuff in the crypto space, and it is super cool. And I 100% agree. Like everyone that I talk
And
to,
and tell me, I know that you focus on marketing and stuff like that, but are you 100% crypto and blockchain focused in your content?
yeah, we've
Oh,
been
sweet.
100% focused on crypto and Web3 since we started, which was like 2018.
Oh, hell
Um,
yeah.
yeah, as of recently, I'll admit a little bit of shiny object syndrome where we launched a division that focuses on just tech and SaaS, primarily
Yeah.
SaaS, but it's a small piece of
Here's
our
here's here's the thing though, and I bet you agree with me, but I would love to hear your thoughts. When somebody did a tech company, when I started a company, I don't know, 12 years ago, shit is even more like 15 years ago, we would talk about it and explain that it is an internet company. We're doing a tech startup, right? And there's no such thing as an internet company anymore. Like you ask a kid that's fresh out of college or you ask anybody starting a company, they're not starting the conversation going, I'm starting this new internet company. It's called Google, right? Or whatever, right? Like that doesn't exist. And I think that's what's going to happen with our space, because just like, now every restaurant you go to, everything you do is some kind of interaction with the internet or a website or a web app or whatever. Every single thing we do, I think in the future, maybe not every single thing we do, but behind the scenes parts of it are going to be touching the blockchain or touching crypto, whether it's the points you get at Starbucks or you're using Bitcoin, right? I think it's going to happen, but like what better evolution of the traditional SaaS model than what crypto can enable, than staking or something like that, right? And so just saying you're doing SaaS or even AI or whatever anyone wants to do, there's going to be a blockchain element to it a few years from now. And to like have a brand name or have an idea that's 100% just uses the word crypto or blockchain or whatever will seem antiquated and funny as like, a website that goes like, I don't know, I don't know if there even is one anymore, but like, or there was back in the day, like PC magazine or something, right? Like, like what is a PC? Like, isn't is those computers we had at home were way worse than the phones we carry around in our pocket today.
I'll admit it's going slower than I would like. I think you
Yeah.
definitely agree, just like everyone else in the space. But the direction we're definitely going, though, is like it's going to be kind of this like under the hood component to a lot of different businesses.
Look, I see it. Our and going to my motivations, right? My motivations as a super, grow up punk rocker person that wants a borderless world, right? That believes in, if not there's too much bureaucracy and bullshit now, but like believes in like the true ideas of a union and things like that, right? And if I want to make the world a level playing field and a better place, there's nothing better than this technology. And there's nothing better than like DeFi, right? But uh, idealistically, as much as I want DeFi, the great thing about banks starting to participate in this world and big institutions are that they have to compete with us or they're going to lose customers. And so even though I think that most of their organizations are, they're shitty, crappy, like evil organizations, if you just look historically, not that I believe they all still are, there's bad, right? They don't treat customers right. They're not, they're not what our ideals are in a world of DeFi. Them participating is a good thing for that ubiquity, right? Because even though, most of us don't love the idea of a CBDC or love a chain that's managed and centralized by JP Morgan, them participating and doing these things and building these rails is going to be significant for adoption, whether we like it or not, right? Like everyone started using email in a regular basis because of the workplace, right? Most SaaS, most tech, most of everything actually kind of, the model is not consumer first. It's all of us got used to it, having to use it at work, and then went, oh shit, this is cool. I can email my friend in another country, or email my friend across the street, or use instant messenger and start communicating and whatever. And it evolves to where it is today. So I think, getting real nerdy about it, I'm behind the scenes seeing companies being tapped by those big institutions to power transactions, to power things that they won't even show their customers on the front end, because they realize, like, if you've used any of the products, even the shitty ones like Celsius's of the world that ended up backfiring on us, if you ever use that to borrow against your crypto and you didn't instantly go like, holy fuck, like imagine if I could do this on the mortgage of my house, like one click borrow against it. I own this condo. I have 100K in equity in it. Why can't I just borrow 50 grand with like a click? To borrow, I have to like go onto 18 websites, call somebody on the phone, do verification, have a person come to my house to do a valuation of my house, do like a what's it called, an appraisal, even though my house is already insured beyond what the appraisal would be anyway. So the appraisal is only there because of bureaucracy. No reason it should actually exist in this particular use case. But like, it takes me 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. What if I have to pay a credit card if my car breaks, right? We've all borrowed against our crypto like instantly, and then go like, what do the banks do, right? Like, so, but the interesting part of that is that like a JP Morgan, a Schwab, a Fidelity has a bazillion customers, and the top 1% of their customers knows that they could call up their rep and be like, yo, Ty, I want to borrow $1 million because I want to buy this vacation home, whatever, and I need to just free it up. Can you give me a quick line of credit, whatever? And Ty goes and he goes, yeah, man, I see you own shares in this company and that company, whatever. You're good for it. I send you a thing, whatever, and we do the loan. But what about the 99% of the rest of the people, or even just the next 20%, the people who have like a retirement account at Fidelity or whatever, and they own shares in a private company, or they own shares in a real estate trust and whatever? For them to borrow against it is a huge, huge, huge pain in the ass, but they might be a millionaire, right? And what Schwab is realizing is going like, wait a sec, if we have customers that in their assets hold whatever value of money, and we can just let them one click borrow against it because we already have the data, we already have the stuff and whatever, utilizing this technology, we're unlocking the ability to make a shit ton more money. So they're going to use our technology to do this stuff. What we don't realize is that stuff is happening. They're having these conversations. They've had since like 2017, since like that first kind of crazy run, they've had employees at these companies whose full-time job it was to be like the blockchain people. They've done nothing. Those people have been miserable. Like most of them have left and started like crypto companies at this point.
Well, I bet they deal with like the same frustration that you and I deal with, which is like seeing a better solution and the banks being as slow and bureaucratic as they are, and just stifling all that. I imagine it's an incredibly frustrating role. Probably the most frustrating role in America is
it's the worst. Like, especially like wiring money, and then on top of it, then they want to charge you like a fee. So if you've ever had like a problem where they go like, oh, sorry, you can't use the online system, come into the office to sign the wire and whatever. And it's just so miserable because you're filling out these forms with all the information they already have about you, and then they want you to sign it. I remember one time a person at a bank was telling me I had to wait for a manager because they didn't have the authority to send a wire or whatever. It was because we were like using Wells Fargo or something. I was like sitting there, and I could see that the manager I'm waiting for is like, talking to another customer. They're doing their job, doing their thing, opening up an account for someone, whatever. And I finally went to the person, like the teller, who was just like staring at me like across the room because they can't do it. And I'm just like, you really can't do this. Like, we just need to wire money to our account. Like, it was literally my account at one bank to my account at another bank. I just need you to send Union Bank, $1,000. And I'm sitting there. And then the person's like, oh, you know what? Like this and that. And let me fill out the form in the meantime. And as they're filling out the form, they asked me some question that made me realize, oh, you're going to charge me $50 to make this transfer. And I was so annoyed at that point. It wasn't even about the $50, even though $50 is egregious. And imagine if you were, somebody needing to send money to their family across the world. This is not okay. I just literally went, I want to withdraw this money. And it was maybe a little more than $1,000. And they're like, oh, this is more than the limit we could do in cash and whatever. And I was like, give me a cashier's check or give me cash. And I want to withdraw money from my own account. And eventually the person gave me cash because they couldn't give me a cashier's check. At that point, I was starting to be an ass. And I was like, I'm not paying for this cashier's check. It's my money. I just want to take it to a bank across the street. They gave me the cash in an envelope, like $100 bills in an envelope. Like I felt like a criminal or a drug dealer or something. And I literally walked across the street to the Union Bank and then deposited it. And that somehow was faster and easier and cost me less money than them essentially sending a digital note across the street to just move money from one account to another. Right? Like, it's so mind blowing how archaic these systems are, because we feel like it's digital, right? Like most people get their paychecks auto debited and drafted, or whatever it's called.
It was made way more apparent to me in the past couple months. We launched this kind of like SaaS version of our agency, like almost like a blend between like a SaaS product and like just a kind of client portal. And part of it is payments are processed via Stripe. We've taken crypto forever. Yeah. That's been like the primary way of people paying. And now we're taking Stripe, and it's like an eye-opening experience, honestly, because they'll pay it. It'll take literally there's the ACH time to go through, which is like 3 to 4 days sometimes. And then Stripe doubles it for whatever reason. Yeah. And I'm waiting for the money for a week. And then by the time I get it, it's 5% has been taken out of it. And then in the same day, someone will pay us in crypto and a minute and $1 in fees. It's like,
and we'll complain depending on which chain it's on, because there'll be like 9 minutes till like the third or fourth verification. We're like, damn, this freaking 9 minutes to whatever. But it is funny. And what's crazy though too, Stripe, for most people listening, if you don't know, Stripe is probably one of the better and easier services to integrate and more fair services. It's getting now to the point where it's kind of become a juggernaut, so not quite as great as when they first started, but it's known for essentially being one of the better ones, right?
Yeah, and with blockchain transactions, you see, even if you haven't confirmed the transaction, you see it right there. You see one confirmation. It's it's so fast. And back to the original point of it's going to be kind of integrated into everything. I'm really excited for that. I'm not one of those people that's really so anti centralized currency. I don't think that should be the forced version of crypto, because obviously that doesn't address a lot of the reasons why crypto was created. But just the fact that I want to be able to, if I move money, I want to be able to get it the same day from one bank to another. You know what I mean? Why do I have to wait 3 days?
It's just mind blowing, because we know at this point that everything is digital, right? It's not like they actually have to send a piece of paper or a courier or something, or a Wells Fargo old school, like the commercials, with the horses pulling the armored wagon, right? From this isn't the 1800s or whatever. Everything is digital. And they've now they went from the old system just being the way they did it, and then it's easier to at least visualize what the cost is. And then they switched to digital, but they use that legacy part of everything, including the building they're in, everything else involved in having that real estate and whatever, as the justification to charge you the money they charge you. And we live in a world where we don't give a shit anymore, right? I don't go into a bank and go, ooh, the golden building this is in gives me trust of this bank, and that's why I'm going to use it. That's meaningless to me. In fact, that stuff bothers me now. I started realizing why am I even driving here? Like the gas, the time, the effort, like it's just mind blowing. It doesn't need to exist. And
The amount of money that they charge you, which directly goes into funding their ability to like make you feel like they're a trustworthy entity, and then the stuff they'll do behind the scenes, it's like a slap in the face. Like you're paying for it.
well, it's like I forgot what it was, and maybe it's not the same anymore because our space has grown. But remember, there was it's kind of a vanity metric, not really super meaningful, but it was enough to be meaningful to offend all of us. Was like the year that Wells Fargo paid more money in penalty fees for doing illegal activities than the whole crypto market was in market cap, right? And you were looking at that going like, how is every politician or group talking about the crypto space like it's like we're all criminals and lumping us in with drug dealers and things like that, when the banks just literally do illegal things and go, my bad, and pay the fine. And what's interesting too is everything takes so long, right, to just wire money to do what you were talking about. But they can just instantly fix those problems, the few 100,000 accounts they accidentally created on behalf of their customers and charged fees and whatever. They can instantly fix that in like a day, right? Like they're like simultaneously the least efficient people in the world and geniuses, depending on the moment and the topic.
I can riff with you on this for like an entire day, but I want to go through some other stuff too. Like I said, I was really excited for the call. And I wanted to go through just a lot about like what you've been up to lately, because did you just rebrand, or it's a new entity, DGB? Wasn't it Draper Goren Home before?
Yeah. So what we essentially did was we got towards the end of the investable capital for our last fund, and we just kind of regrouped moving forward and made some adjustments and changes. And a lot of it has to do with, we had created our last entity over time and out of necessity, right? Like one of my companies had failed. I was still running a crowdfunding conference because that company was doing stuff in the crowdfunding space. And we started doing deals with companies. I joined a fund, and then I realized that fund I absolutely love, but they're a kind of general startup fund. I learned a ton from them. They're one of our investors in my previous company. And I love the guys that run it. They, to this day are close friends and awesome. And one of the guys there started running into me at crypto conferences going like, hey, you like this stuff too? We should do a crypto fund. And so we created it, but I was low man on the totem pole, right? I was like a principal there. I was running it. I did a couple of deals, but the other folks there were focused on trading and tokens. And I wanted to focus on early stage venture and investing in companies at the earliest stage and not worry about, is the token going to go up in the next 48 hours? Should I sell it? Should I dump it? Should I this? Like that shit I don't like, for the same reason I don't like the other stuff. When somebody wins big on one of those initial pumps, somebody else is losing big. And to me, that's not cool. And that's not really the ethos of the reason why we're getting into this space, right? So as fun as that speculation stuff is, I wanted to invest in companies that I expect to be around in 10 years, that might be the people who are building the foundation for this whole new economy and these whole new, more fair systems. So that's what I wanted to focus on. They were doing other things. I got a couple of deals in, and then I ended up moving on to create what became DGH. And that was really awesome. But we did it kind of on the back of the conference. We changed the conference name from Crowd Invest Summit to Crypto Invest Summit. Then we eventually made it LA Blockchain Summit. And we were just doing deals, but we didn't have money ourselves. We were a couple of entrepreneurs kind of just scrapping it together. And then when we decided we wanted to scale it, Tim Draper ended up making a big investment, becoming an equal partner with us. That's when we rebranded it to DGH, to Draper Goren Home and all that. And then more recently, we raised a fund, and the fund doubled down on the winning companies. It was really, really cool in the way we worked. And I was looking at that model going, I think we can do it better. And I wanted to regroup and think it through. So that's what I did over the last year or so. So the recent announcement is that we did it. We kind of drew a line in the sand, raised a few bucks for a new entity called Draper Goren Blockchain, DGB. And Tim Draper is my partner in it. I got very lucky in that my good friend David Blesnak, who was actually one of those first two deals I did at the first fund, I invested in his company. He is a pioneer in the space. If you remember, there was a company called Total. Before 1inch existed, before 0x did what they did, there was a company called Total, which was the first decentralized exchange liquidity aggregator. So we were the first people who you could say, I want to swap my ETH for DAI, and it would route it across all the decentralized exchanges and get you the best price. They were first. They were later acquired by a company. Cut to the beginning of this year, David was leading a group at Coinbase, and he was, luckily for me, and I think he feels good about it too, was laid off. He joined me in as a partner in this as well. So him and I are the managers of DGB. What we're doing today is kind of restarting the main partnership. So that includes creating this new venture studio so we could write checks to brand new companies, to people with an idea at the earliest stage. And we're also incubating, creating a few companies with people in the industry that we're friends with, who we can bring on as co-founders and come up with some of our own ideas. And the next step will be to kind of copy the model we did before. We may or may not, for compliance reasons, I'm saying that, raise a fund next year or in the future to then double down on the winning teams the way we did in the past. But I've refined the model a little bit, and for people who are accredited investors and who would want to talk about these kind of things, I'm not saying I'm currently fundraising for any of those funds or anything. What I'm saying though is that we changed the model in terms of the terms of the deal and the way our company is structured to build long-term partnerships with our investors in the same way we do with our entrepreneurs. Because we write the first check to a company, I expect to be hanging with these people and married to them for the next 10 plus years. And a lot of them are going to fail with their startups. And when they fail, I want to have the relationship where when they go to start their next company, I'm the first call they make because the experience was great, because we're so close, and because we actually add the value we say we add. I hope we do. I think we do. And ask some of our portfolio companies as a reference if you're an entrepreneur. But that's what we're doing today. And so that's what the announcement for DGB is. It's kind of a continuation, but it is a kind of hard refresh in terms of the platform that we're building to do these things. I just think it was time for figuring out how to optimize it, right? Like when you're a startup and you iterate over and over again, that's kind of what we're doing today. And super stoked on it. So yeah, we just made that announcement recently. It was kind of, announcing it, that it exists, and also announcing that David has come on board to be my partner, which is really exciting to me because he's a rock star.
The companies that you invested in with like the previous, call it like entity, I guess, like I'm thinking like LunarCrush, because I know that's one that you were involved in. That transfer over? Like, are you now like?
Yeah. So technically, we still manage the portfolio. We still are in touch. I'm on the board of LunarCrush. I'm on the board of a bunch of the companies in the portfolio.
I saw your Twitter. Yeah. It's like you're on the board.
Well, it's funny because like the secret that's not really a secret is that we're not at all like traditional VCs. And that's not a secret. Like you go on Twitter and whatever, we play around in the communities, we goof around. I always joke with the investors, like there's some, buttoned up suit and tie investors we have. And I don't know if it's my own insecurity, but I'll like make sure to explain to them, like, when you follow me on Twitter, you're going to be like, who is this scatterbrained weirdo ape that does weird, silly things and whatever. And then I go, and then on LinkedIn, I might have a little different of a vibe. And on our calls, I'll have a completely different vibe. And the reason is that like, I am that nerd, weird, ape, goofy dude. And because I'm that guy, I get access to deals and opportunities that maybe a person that is the more traditional buttoned up VC might not, because in our space, whether we like it or not, VCs have a pretty bad rap for good reasons a lot of times. And so I don't want to be that traditional guy. I'm not that guy. But where I'm going with all this is that, we're very, very different. We participate directly with the companies and we do things. And where I was going with the board thing is that because I invest in a company, especially at the earliest stage, because I think that they're onto something, they're doing something cool. Maybe I know they're going to change directions 18,000 times along the way or not. But the premise, the idea, the problem they're solving is an exciting one to me. And I don't want to control anything. I don't want to be the guy who strong arms anyone and goes like, we need to do this, we need to go this direction. I'm not smarter than these entrepreneurs. If I was, I'd start the company myself, right? And so a lot of times I end up on the board of the companies though, because that's part of me being a wingman to the founders, is we help and we participate almost like co-founders. But then when they go to raise their next round of funding, we might lead those rounds and do those things. And then at some point, a traditional VC comes in and goes, well, if we're writing a $2 million check, we need a board seat and this and that and whatever. And then I get a call from the entrepreneur going, what do I do? And I go, I gotcha. And then I go and flex my muscle and be like, well, actually, we were earlier investors, we were this. And what I try to do is calm the person down and convince them not to take a board seat, because that's the easiest path. And then we just move forward. Or if they insist, I then insist I must absolutely have a board seat so that I could cancel out any stupid advice or strong arming that VC might do. So most of the board seats I have are essentially because another VC or group said, well, if we're going to invest, we need a board seat. And then the founders go, oh shit, they might have some control over us or whatever. And I go, I gotcha. And then I balance them out that way. And then sometimes, a board becomes actually part of the governing of the company when a company grows to a certain size. And so then I join in that respect. Like on Ownera, the board makes decisions moving forward and how it's being built, because they've now built a really big company. They've raised a lot of money. They got these institutional investors, whatever. So I participate in the board meetings and actually navigate the company. With LunarCrush, I don't know if we've actually had a board meeting. Like, I think like Joe has called me going, you're getting a board resolution, whatever, this is what it means. And I go, sweet dude. And I look at it really quick and it's done. Right. But now they recently did a raise and some stuff. And I think we're going to have to do board meetings regularly because there's another institutional fund that's a board. But these are people that I've worked with now for years and I trust implicitly and are practically family. Right. So it looks like I participate in all these boards and all these things because I'm in the mix with these startups all day long. But most of them are not like, when you hear about some dude that's on the board of some public company, or like those people who are like professional board members that like wear the suit and tie and do the thing. It's different.
Every question that I ask you, your responses to them opens up like 5 more questions that I have. Like trying to pick and choose what the money.
I got to be better at also just answering the question and not going full.
No, I like it. Because I learned things that I didn't even intend to learn. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me about Joe. My conversations with him. Chill.
By the way, for anyone listening, if you don't know about LunarCrush, it's lunarcrush.com. They're super rad. And what's really cool, if you didn't know this, and Ty, I don't know if you know this yet, but what they were doing was taking in all the data that's happening live on the internet to basically give you better insights than anyone else on cryptocurrencies, on tokens, and how the community is growing, what's being said about them, what's spam, is it bullish, is it bearish, like all the sentiment and all that stuff in a way that's literally their data is better than anyone else. And I am biased, but I'm saying it. But what they just recently did, is they opened up other categories, because the same technology that can be used to tell you that, 20% more people are discussing Bitcoin today than yesterday, and that's filtering out the bots. That same technology can tell you about your favorite football team, about Taylor Swift, about Joe Biden versus Trump, right? And so they recently, just in the last couple of weeks, opened up categories. So now when I tell people to check crypto on LunarCrush, I actually say, go check it out on the cryptocurrency category on LunarCrush, because you could go onto sports and check the popularity of a specific soccer team in the like UEFA league or whatever, right? Like it's really, really cool. And I think everyone can use their imagination to see where that's going. But it's kind of the first time ever you can also see the pulse of what's happening right now, this second, on the internet in a way that doesn't exist anywhere. You can't get that data by Googling something. Like you go to Google, click on the news category, you'll see what has been written in the news about a particular topic today, but you can't see that the dude on the ground in the war zone that posted the thing 30 seconds ago is trending or is getting a lot of love or is there, right? And they offer that. It's really freaking cool. So that's my shill. I won't shill anything else.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm happy to have a follow up show because I remember using it a while back. So I haven't been on a little bit, so I imagine it's totally different now. But it was definitely at the time one of the best tools I've seen for social sentiment analysis in the Web3 space, at least. The revenue model for LunarCrush, is it like subscriptions to get access to advanced tools? Is it like partnerships with other platforms? Like I'm thinking like a Masari that wants to add like a social sentiment kind of piece.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, but they'll be better at telling you where it's going because I think it's changed over time. There are ways like they tried to change and they have changed, the SaaS business model in the way that like to get the pro features, you can just stake some tokens or you can just pay for it, right? And they did it in a more crypto and, in my opinion, more sustainable and long-term way, which is really, really cool. But they've also done some things where you can self-serve advertisements within their platform. You can pay for their API. If you go on Coinbase right now and you look at a token in the Coinbase app and you scroll down, you start to see data points and it'll say powered by LunarCrush on there. So some people pay to utilize their API for the data and stuff like that. And so there's a bunch of kind of different models within there, and they're evolving too. Like I said, they're moving beyond just crypto. So I bet you some of those models are going to change now. And so I can't totally 1000% speak to it today because it's evolving, but Joe and John, I'm sure, would be stoked to go over it and talk about it and invite your listeners to check it out.
Yeah, one. I want to get through a bunch of other stuff, but I have one more question on that. With them expanding beyond just being a tool for the Web3 space, are they, because LunarCrush, the name, implies some level of like crypto relation. Are they considering a rebrand?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. But also, what about their name implies crypto? Lunar is the moon, right? Like it's our own connection to crypto. I think most people who aren't in crypto would have no idea what LunarCrush even means, right? Like it's kind of a funny thing. Like nobody knows that. Well, not nobody. Like most people don't know that Google is a term for like Googleplex, which is just what is it, like an unfathomably large number. That's basically what it means. Has nothing to do with search or something like that. Obviously, you can imply, oh yeah, all the content, whatever. Which is just Google, right? LunarCrush, it's like lunar, moon. What does that like? We think about it as crypto, and it is kind of crypto focused. We got to ask them, from your perspective too, being the marketing expert, right? Is it? Should it be rebranded? Should it be something else? Should it be? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I want to see because that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that because me, you get so in the weeds of crypto that you forget that lunar doesn't mean anything to people outside.
One moon, right? Like moon, lunar rockets, but actually it's a meme, right? Like I remember at the beginning days of crypto and whatever, I did some news thing, and David Blesnak, actually my partner, I was on a call with him right before, and he dared me before the call to it was like CNN Business or Fox Business, one of those things. They want to talk crypto, like Bitcoin must have been pumping or Dogecoin did something, who knows, right? and he said, I dare you to say memes are money on TV. And I was like, done. And then it became a thing I would say all the time. But like, if you think about it, like there's guys like Elon Musk who really understood that better than the rest of us in terms of marketing and the value of like the moment. But crypto is maybe the first economy that has understood that kind of value of the momentary meme, whatever. But it actually has nothing to do with crypto, right? Like the fact that the way we real time market and do these things are just the evolution of the space. Like when it happened with the Wall Street bets stuff, everyone talked about it like it was this revolutionary, crazy thing. It was just the first time they saw it happen to the stock market. But LunarCrush existed to basically know that same data that you had to know to be in those Reddit pages and whatever to move the market and do whatever for the crypto market before any of that even happened. Now it's just commonplace to go, oh yeah, people speaking on the internet can affect stock price. Like, but if you would have said before the Wall Street bet stuff that that's the truth, most people and most, people in the media, especially in the traditional world, be like, yeah. But when, what's the Berkshire Hathaway guy? Obviously, like the big dude,
Warren Buffett.
Yeah, Warren Buffett. When Warren Buffett says something, it's more meaningful. Yeah, okay. But I bet you we could get an army of people tweeting something that can move the market more than Warren Buffett today, right? And people, that would have blown people's minds just a few months ago or a year ago. And now it's just commonplace. Like, oh man, are these Reddit communities going to do something? Are they going to say something? Like, from a dollar perspective, any of the big institutions could annihilate them. But from a power perspective, those groups are losing power, right? And LunarCrush existed to measure that, right? And so when they moved to stocks and stuff like that, they were able to also just show these things, right? Like they can now prove it and go, oh, that happened on social media. You see that spike, and immediately following, the price did that, or the price did that, or the price did that. Anybody that was following it and could trade fast enough could have actually done something on those actions. And that's crazy meaningful. And crypto, it kind of opened people's eyes to that, right? And it should have been pretty obvious sooner. And there were probably hedge funds privately doing things like that and monitoring these things, knowing it. But that's part of the weird asymmetrical information that can't exist anymore, because everything is happening in public, which is pretty awesome. But also creating lots of noise.
I want to go back to your partnership with Tim Draper, because he's obviously a big name in the investing world. Like, how did that come about? Because I imagine, I don't know how old you are, but I imagine like you must have been like a mid-20s, relatively inexperienced person. Like, do you have a connection there?
So, yeah, I'm now I'm 40 now, so I'm probably a little older than maybe the average in our space, but not old, but not a baby. I got lucky in that I met Tim about 15 years ago or so, when I was doing that one company I mentioned before in the crowdfunding space. It was called Invested In, and we had an accelerator that had invested in us, and Tim was an investor in that accelerator, and he came into the office. And it was actually a really cool, fun kind of moment story too, because it lines up with my talking too much and also Tim's personality, and he kind of can do this similar thing. Comes into the office, and everyone knows that I'm the talker, and we're in a co-working spot with like probably 10 desks, 10 different companies. Maybe there wasn't 10 companies yet in there. Maybe there's 6, whatever it was. But the partner walks Tim in and goes, "Hey, everyone, this is Tim Draper. He has an out. He's just dropping by the office. We just had a meeting. He only has 15 minutes before he has to leave." Like, he's pointing at his watch, like saying this, like, like a dad telling us, "Really quickly, one by one, I need you guys I'll walk Tim around. You guys tell him what you do, and we'll set up follow-up meetings with anyone he's interested in talking to. But remember, he only has 10 minutes. And then the guy pointed at me and he goes, "Alon, you're going to be last." And he said, "Alon, you're going to be last. You talk too much." And like, it was like a funny joke, because we had just talked about how I needed to figure out how to pitch my company in a more concise way. So it was like, he was joking, messing with me, whatever. Tim went around. I started explaining to Tim what we were doing. And he kind of looks to the side, he's thinking about it. He grabs the chair that's sitting next to my desk. I always kept a second chair there because my partner would come around and we would look at my monitor and do whatever. He pulls out the chair, sits down. We sat there for like over an hour. And he then goes, "My son is maybe starting a new thing, but he's also working on something. I think he might be able to utilize your technology for something he's doing. His name is Adam. I'm going to connect you with him. Maybe you guys could work together or something." And he did like the connection over email on, at that time, probably his BlackBerry or something, right? Like, this is early days. He makes the connection to Adam. Adam may have flown down the next day, or because we're in Southern California, there in like near Silicon Valley, like San Mateo area. So it's like, in a 1 hour Southwest flight, whatever. I think he flew down the next day or the day after or something, after we connected. And Adam ended up being one of our first customers, because Adam wanted to start a platform for investing in startups, and he decided to name it Boost Funder. And Boost Funder was going to go to all of these startup accelerators that were popping up at the time. It was like a very popular thing to do. There was just too many of them. And he wanted to power their demo days and allow people to raise money online. Just around the same time, Obama signed the Jobs Act into law, saying that it was going to start being legal to raise money on the internet. But it took like a year or two for those for the SEC and those groups to actually finalize the rules and laws. So it was like a gray area period of time where AngelList was just getting started and stuff. But he wanted to launch Boost Funder. But what we didn't know behind the scenes is that Adam had just written, or at some point within the first 9 months that I knew him, wrote a check to a brand new company called Coinbase, and he was the first investor in Coinbase, outside investor, like an angel check. Like, I don't know how much it was, probably 25 or 50K, right? His first check into the company. And so he was learning about Bitcoin before any of us really totally knew about it. Like, being in the techie space, I'd heard about it, but not really known anything real yet. Very soon after we started working with Adam, he pivoted away from having the platform for fundraising. And he said, I can start my own accelerator. I think I could do it better than the other people. By the second cohort of companies that Adam had in Boost, now he took the funder off, he named it Boost. By the second or third cohort of companies, he decided, we're going to incubate and accelerate Bitcoin companies. The word blockchain, if you look it up, wasn't really used in academic papers and things until like 2015. This is pre that. People were talking about them not as blockchain companies, or even they kind of used the word crypto a little, but they were just saying Bitcoin companies. So they were like, we're incubating Bitcoin companies. This is like 2014, 2013. Like it was mind blowing, right? Like, this is crazy early. And so through the deal that we had done with Adam, we owned like the tiniest sliver of Boost, like tiny, like a fraction of 1%, right? After he raised a fund and did all that stuff. But I would go to the demo days because of that reason, and because I wanted to keep my relationship going with Tim. And I got to meet Adam, and he's a few years younger than me, but just instantly knew this kid is brilliant. Like, crazy to think in that day and age, like, this digital money idea was going to be that big of a deal. And so I wanted to just hang and learn and whatever. And I maybe mentored a couple of the companies, because a lot of those companies were utilizing crowdfunding like mechanisms. So Adam would go, hey, Alon knows crowdfunding. You should meet this company doing a Bitcoin exchange in South America. I was like, what the hell is Bitcoin? Why do you need an exchange? There's only one thing, like, and he's like, no, there's going to be future where there's more of these Bitcoins and things. Like, we didn't know what the hell, like, what was going on, but I got to learn about it in a cool way. And I got to work with Adam, like, tangentially. I worked with him directly for like 3 months, maybe even less, because we launched his thing, and maybe a month later, he was already launching Boost as an accelerator. But Tim was an investor in that. I stayed in touch with him. When that company ultimately failed, I had done some experiments in crypto in 2015 or so. I actually flew Adam out for a big startup event in my local startup community so he could teach everyone about Bitcoin and stuff. And so I could, as an excuse, learn about it too. So I got to participate and learn and whatever. But what was cool is I stayed in touch with Tim. And then when I went to join that fund that was an investor in my company, after my company failed, they were a part of the Draper Venture Network. The Draper Venture Network is basically a network of funds that Tim is affiliated with in some way. He created like this network, like a kind of union of funds. Some of them he's an investor in, some of them he just kind of advises and helps. Some of them have his name on it, and some of them don't. But the company that I was with, I got to go to the Draper Network events that were just for fund managers. Before that, I went to a few Draper Network events that were for like the CEOs of founders and stuff, which were really super valuable. You'd go up to San Mateo for a day or two. You'd meet some of the other funds. So you got access to the VCs. And then you got to meet some of the entrepreneurs that he had invested in earlier, like founders of Skype and Hotmail and people like that, like as a startup founder, you just suck in that knowledge and get to meet these people, and just being in proximity, like, is very motivating and all that. So that was cool. But to be on the side of the table of the investors and go to private meetings where I got to hear how the investors were talking to each other and share the deals, that to me was like where I really learned. Because you think you know your shit when you're a startup founder, and you think you know this is how a fund works, or this is how this works. And I thought I knew even better than average, because I was building technology for these funds online and stuff like that. So I knew the mechanics, but I didn't really know, right? Especially, I'm not the traditional pedigree, like Stanford, Harvard Business School, Angel Group, VC, whatever person. I'm just not that guy. There's nothing against that. I kind of wish I was born into things like that, but I grew up raised by immigrants who owned an auto parts shop, right, out of our garage. And so, I just didn't know what I didn't know, and I got to learn so much. So then when we started what became DGH, we had always kept in touch with Tim, and he spoke at our events, and I would do stuff. I had not given him a hard sell on anything I was working on, and I'd been really careful about the introductions I would make to him, because I really valued the relationship beyond just an investor that I knew, because we worked directly. He had introduced me to his family and stuff. I was a part of the Draper network. But when I went to start my own thing, I got to be a part of the Draper network because of the value I knew it would add to us. Plus, I knew I was in a category where all of the network wanted to participate, but nobody knew crypto. Nobody knew blockchain. All they knew about it was like, Tim's investing in this company called Ledger. Should we follow him? Nobody understood it, but they knew that Tim is a crazy genius and is, when it comes to these kind of deals. And there's been lots of times where he went, this is going to be huge. And people went, an electric car company? That's stupid. A private space company? That's stupid. But then they all ate their words, right? So so a lot of people would follow him. But what was great was we went to Tim, and Tim kind of said two things that made me feel really good when we joined. There was one thing where he basically went to the funds and he said, these guys, pointing at us, are going to put us out of business if they do their job right, which made me happy, because he even knows that VC kind of style business is a boys club and it's not really fair. And he wants to destroy it himself, because he knows it's coming. He knows DAOs and things are coming to take the place of it. And he wants to be a part of it because he knows that the time is up, right? And he knows he could do it better, and we could all do better. So he kind of like, part of his investment in us was like knowing their end is near and we need to come and take it, is why he loves Bitcoin. And then the next thing was, basically he said, like, we were the only at the time, and I think we still are, 100% blockchain and crypto focused fund in the Draper network. A lot of the other investors participate. Obviously, Tim, like Draper Associates and him directly, do a ton of crypto deals, but it's not their only focus. And then, Draper Dragon, that's based in China, Manatara, based in South America, Draper B1, it used to be called B Booster Ventures in Spain, also does crypto deals. They all do crypto deals. They're starting to, but none of them do it exclusively. And what's really great for us about it is that every entrepreneur that hits them up, that's too early for them, is right in our sweet spot. And then every deal that they do, or they're interested in doing, they need a reference on or a second opinion on, or they go like, is this right? Like, because if you don't live in it, think about like the way people pitch crypto stuff and smart contracts and whatever. If you don't know that world, it's like a foreign language. So we get to be called in as the wingmen for these funds all the time. And for us, that's just incredible deal flow. And when our companies grow, they trust us when we go, you've got to talk to LunarCrush. Like, this is one of the good ones. Like, this is, and we also get to know, like, okay, this person doesn't like crypto so much, but they like B2B SaaS. So I could pitch them LunarCrush in a different way and know it, right? And these companies, these funds collectively around the world manage billions of dollars. And so it's just, it was a perfect place for us to live. And thankfully, Tim loved the premise of what we do. We are diehard crypto nerds like he is. And so it worked out really, really well. So I'm super happy. And then when we started this new one right now, I kind of started at the beginning of this year, or at some point at the beginning of this year, going, okay, I'm doing a new venture studio. I didn't want to presume Tim is going to be my partner again or anything like that. And I went, okay, I'm doing this on my own. Let's see what happens. And I'm very fortunate and lucky that Tim still loves me and wrote a check for this, and we're able to continue. And he actually insisted. What's funny is I wanted to come up with a new brand name for what we were doing. From a marketing perspective, I always felt it was a little weird to have my name on it. I'm like, partly because it feels like a lawyer or something, but then partly because it feels like an Andreessen or something like that, where it's like, these guys are a traditional VC, and I don't like traditional shit. And I just never really wanted my name on it. It was just a thing. So I said, let's just come up with a brand name, or let's call it Draper something. Like he has Draper Associates and Draper Dragon and whatever. And so I was going to come up with like a word like Draper Decentralized, Draper Union. Like, I don't know, we were coming up with all sorts of weird names. And then he's just like, nah, let's just call it Draper Goren Crypto. And then I changed it to blockchain. partly for an Easter egg because DGB, because at that point, I knew David Blesnak would join as a partner. And I was like, ooh, DGB, maybe if we add a name later. Or I thought the word blockchain. Then I started playing politics. Blockchain versus crypto is a little more PC for the institutional people I'm going to go after in the future. And I want to lean into crypto. Like I like the term. I don't want people to think of it as a bad word, but I also want to think about how do I add the most value to our companies. How I add the most value to our companies is also having a big war chest. And I don't want, one of those institutional funds that invest in funds to go, we don't do crypto. Because there's so many of them that go like, they do the bullshit that the politicians do. We believe blockchain can be utilized, whatever, but crypto, that's like a cesspool for criminals and whatever. And it's such BS. It's just complete nonsense. So I went politics and I picked blockchain as the term.
I like it. It's funny all the like funny things that like founders do, like when considering a name. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking, it sounds like such a trivial like little thing, but
I mostly treat it.
Like you're finding the company like in that first step of the company.
I normally treat it very trivially, and this time I tried to really hyper focus and think about it, but you start being a snake eating your own tail, and an idea you think is good, when you go to bed at night, you wake up the next morning, you're like, that's so stupid, whatever. And then you second guess it. But the thing is, it's like, in my opinion, just like everything else in the startup world, you have to just plant your flag and go. Shit's going to change, right? But like, you can really go too deep in overthinking it. And I started to do that. And I remember like talking to David, going like, David, I've been doing this thing with Tim. We decided on a name. Then you got laid off, you joining as a partner and this and that. Now I feel bad. Your name is not on it, but we got to work together a little bit longer before whatever. I don't even like that my name's on it. So I'm like eating myself up, overthinking it and whatever. And then kind of forgetting my own advice that I've told companies a million times. Like, if it doesn't work, you just change it. It's not as heavy as a lift. Like there's a lot of resistance to change in everything, right? But what I learned is that like the brand name is crazy important, but more important is the data, the product, your database, right? Because if you change the name of your podcast tomorrow, you lose some name recognition, whatever. But if you have your email list of every single person that is subscribed to the podcast and you go, hey guys, from this day on, it's called Ty Smith's Radical Podcast of Awesomeness.
I was thinking,
right? It's funny. I mean, I think that's a cool rebrand. I think you should consider it. When I worked at MySpace back in the day, we had this stupid idea, like me and my friend Mike, who was a childhood friend who I got to apply for the job I was the manager for. So like I hired him. I almost lost the ability to hire him because he showed up to the interview in like a full suit and he brought a briefcase, but it was like a suit that he like got for like a friend's bar mitzvah or something that was like way too small on him because he hadn't worn it in like 3 years. And he thought it was like a funny joke because he thought I was interviewing him. I'm like, you idiot, I'm not the only person interviewing you. It was this whole funny thing. But yeah, he's like a brother, especially back then. We like lived in each other's business all the time. And he and I had this idea because early days of the internet, early days of e-commerce and stuff, we had this idea for a company, like, like later on the Dollar Shave Club and all these things. But before any of that, there was really very little e-commerce going on, especially subscription e-commerce or like these online things. So we had this idea, what if people buy a mystery prize online? Like, remember you could go to the mall and in certain shops, you might like get a brown bag with candies in it or something, but you don't know what candy is in it. It's just $5 and it's a mystery. So we're like, let's make a website for that. And we made a website. And at the time it was called superawesomemysteryprize.com. And you could go and spend $5 and you get a mystery envelope. You spend $10 and you get like a bubble wrap package, and you spend like $50 or something and you'd get a box. And at first we were really thoughtful about it. Like we sent somebody, because we also wanted it to become like viral and funny. We took a break at work, which ended up being like a 2-hour break instead of a normal like lunch break. And we drove to the beach and we filled up a box with a bag of sand. And it ended up costing us like $100 to ship the $50 box. but we literally like wrote a note like genuine like Santa Monica sand or something, and we sent it to the dude in like Ohio or something. And he posted online like he was pissed at us. He's like, I signed up for a mystery prize. I got a bag of Santa Monica sand or whatever. And then people were laughing about it like, holy shit, that's funny. So then I had my cousin who wasn't working at the time go to thrift shops and just buy random crap and then just send it. And then it would show up broken or it was like whatever. And it was short-lived because we couldn't fulfill the orders and we had real day jobs and wasn't making real money, but it was really funny. And again, it was very similar to the name of the podcast idea. It was like super awesome. It was superawesomemysteryprize.com.
It's so funny to hear, like, because I talk to a lot of people on this podcast and even off of it, like all the crazy, like little, like you look back and it's like, that was never going to work. Like these ideas that like you do when you're like early in your career and like, it almost like makes you, but because there's like a lot of people that just like, they don't do that. You know what I mean? Like they don't try those things. They don't take those swings. But there's like everyone I know that ended up being successful was like that from a pretty early like onset. Like, do you feel like there's, especially in your business, because you see so many companies and you have to make a decision on who you're going to fund and put your, bet on. Do you feel like there's qualities that like stand out to you and you're like, this guy's going to be a winner or this guy's not going to be a winner?
1,000%. I don't know about the winning part, but the like the right entrepreneur and they will be a winner at some point because they it's in my opinion like you learn from your mistakes and you iterate and you move on and you do things, and a startup might fail. Like my first startup ultimately failed, right? But I realized a bunch of things in the process, and I realized also the professional investors, not a single one gave me any grief. I held on to that company for like a year too long. I emptied my savings account. I probably hurt our family in many ways in that respect because I didn't understand that the investors in my company, most of them were professional investors. They expect a lot of their companies to fail. And that when I got the job at the company that, at the fund that was an investor in me, it was the day after I had sent the email, basically with my tail between my legs, basically, telling people what they knew was happening, but like I wasn't sure they knew exactly, that the company failed. And he said, let's meet for coffee tomorrow, was his response to that thing. I went there like shaking in my boots. Like I was freaking out going like, I lost this guy's fund money. Like, is he going to be pissed at me? What's this conversation going to be like? And the dude was stoked, smiling. Everything was good. And then he offered me a job to work at the fund.
That's crazy.
And he and then another one of our investors yelled at me for not ending the company sooner and starting my next company. Like he's like, "What are you doing? Like enough. Like it's done. Don't drag it out. Start the next company. Tell us about it." Like and I realized, right? And then there were a few smaller investors that had questions and things, but they also were learning how to potentially be a professional investor or whatever. But anyway, going back to the question, the qualities, I think there's kind of a couple things. There's people who there's nothing that they can do in life other than do their own company or do their own thing. Like they are absolutely miserable working in a cubicle or working for somebody else. Or they're like, while they're doing that, they're like what I was. I actually, like a few of my favorite jobs I ever had with my best coworkers, I was not miserable because of the job. I was miserable because I was writing down ideas and on the internet while I was at my job, starting little companies and ideas and things. Yeah. What if there was a record label that did it this way? Nobody else does it this way. Why don't they do it this way? And I'm like writing down these ideas and doing these things. And I constantly have to be doing that kind of stuff. And so I found over time to create a way where I could channel all of that into what my day job is. But there's also, I think the next quality is that when certain founders find an idea or a problem they want to solve or whatever, and they have absolutely there's no way they will not try and attack this problem and try and do it. Like there is no conceptualization in their head. There's nothing that they can do to not want to do this, right? Like they're doing it not because somebody went like, oh shit, this is a good business model. Ooh, if I do this, I'm going to make money. They're doing it because they absolutely feel like there's nothing else they can be doing. Like they have to be doing it, right? And there's certain people you can just tell with their energy and their feelings that this is it. And then especially it's during bear markets, there's a lot more of that, like percentage wise between pitches. And then there's some people in those bull markets, there's people who pitch you every day and you're like, they don't give a shit. Like they just went, this is a good business. And sometimes it's a good reason to start a company, but I can't jive with people like that. It just doesn't work for me. There's just some people that like, it's just what they do. They hustle. I used to not like the word hustle, but I like it because it got to be like this tech crunchy, like hustle of startups. Yeah, man, whatever, like cool term. But like, you know, there's always those people that like me. My dad's auto parts shop moved to be on Thousand Oaks Boulevard in the area where I live, right? It was on the boulevard, right where they do the Caneo Valley Days parade once a year. By the time I was like, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 years old, I was going super early in the morning to my dad's shop, bringing a cooler, filling it with ice and Cokes, and walking up and down Thousand Oaks Boulevard selling Cokes for $1 to the people watching the parade.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think my parents gave me that idea. I think like I just went like, oh, my dad's shop is there. We're right there. And so I would go early in the morning because we'd set up the bench so we could watch the parade or whatever when I was a littler. And then at a certain point, I'm like, all those people are there. And then my dad called me up one day from his shop, like when I'm home after school, and goes, this guy just came in. He wants to buy a part for this car. He told me he wants to trade me a vending machine that sells candy bars. Do you want a candy bar machine? And I was like, hell yeah. And then, and
Go ahead at that
my
time.
dad did a deal, right? You know, like, just imagine that with a way heavier Israeli accent, like exactly the way you would imagine you go into an auto parts shop and a dude with an Israeli accent is yelling at you over the counter. That's my dad yelling at me, do you want a thing? And I go, yeah. And then the next time we went to Costco, I had to get money out of my savings, like cash that I had, to buy things. I kept it at my dad's shop at first. Then I started doing, but like at the young age, you just start figuring your stuff out and doing stuff like that. And there's just certain people that did that, but there's also certain people that just did the traditional route and then all of a sudden realized while they're sitting at their cubicle at Amazon going like, this shit's broken. We have to fix this. And they're willing to disconnect from a paycheck and that corporate idea of stability to do this roller coaster of starting a company. And they feel internally like they absolutely can't do anything else because this is it. Like I found my purpose. And what's funny is over time that purpose might change, or they might, that company might fail and they'll find it again because there's a certain person that just is a nerd for that quality of just wanting to change. Yeah.
I'm fully 110% convinced that there is like in 50 years, there's going to be like a scan that you can do, and you can see if this person's going to be an entrepreneur or not. Like it's going to be like no way that they're a screening for like, different, like whatever, like,
like a DNA thing.
It's like that. It's going to be like an entrepreneur gene. Because
I totally believe it.
Yeah. Everything that you've said is like the exact same story of every successful entrepreneur that I met. Like, it's not like, I want to start a business. I like kind of like the work-life balance thing. It's like, I was absolutely miserable doing everything else and so frustrated that I couldn't like build my own thing and be fully in control and all this stuff.
It's cool though. We live in a world where it's a lot more socially acceptable and it's like a lot cooler because I can remember, amongst my Israeli family and stuff, there was a little bit of they're a little bit more risk takers in general. And you tell them I'm quitting my day job to start a company, and everybody would be like, Mazal Tov, congratulations, great, wonderful, go for it, whatever. And then I would go to my more American friends and family and stuff like that, and they'd be like, "Oh, was it a bad job?" And you're like, "No, it was a great job. Were you not getting paid very well? They weren't treating you right." Like, "No, they paid fine." Like, "Oh, were your coworkers bad? Would you have a shitty manager?" "No, I fucking love my coworkers. Like, they're my good friends. Like, I love them, whatever." And they're like, and then they'd be like, so like they'd be confused, right? Like you're quitting your job because there was a culture of you got out of college, you got out of high school, you got your job, you worked your way up. And that culture has changed in the world and in our country, to now nobody sticks to a job more than a couple of years. There's the kind of creator economy stuff. And it's now like a lot more acceptable, which though makes it harder probably for people like me to find who's the one who's here for the right reasons or who absolutely has to be, because there's also like, I think it's bullshit. There's like weird shame in small businesses like in our world, like people go like, oh, he's starting a lifestyle business. Like, that's wonderful. Like my dad had an auto parts shop that he started in our garage that paid for 3 boys to go to college, start companies, buy houses, get married, do the things we did. And on top of it, my mom was a teacher, making a lot of money. Like we're able to live a great life. And if he had outside investors in that, they would have been like, scale, right? Like, and the company would have had to fail or whatever, right? But that's that kind of business, right? And then there's people who also give shame to people who work in desk jobs or cubicles, whatever. And at the same time, it's like, I think that's bullshit too, because you know what? Like a part of me, especially when we go through the roller coaster ride of being an entrepreneur, and people talk a little more about like mental health and different things too, but it's a freaking grind. It's not easy. You're doing what you're passionate about. You're doing what you want technically, but it's fucking hard. And a part of me would be super jealous to be able to be like, I could go to a place, sit at a desk, and when I clock out at 5, 6, 7, whenever I leave, it's over. I don't have to think about it. I can go home, have dinner with the family, have a beer with my dudes, and like that kind of lifestyle. Like people should be jealous of that lifestyle, not shame it like it's a bad thing, because those people are doing great work for great companies or situations, whatever, and it's all good. But we have this kind of culture of like that hustle culture idea of like, or like the people that like, you see rappers or musicians and whatever, and we only see the top 1/1000th of a percent, right, of the people, and they're going like, yeah, I worked myself up and hustled and whatever, and it seems cool, but it's not necessarily for everyone, right? Like, so anyway, where I'm going with the whole idea of it is that, I think there's people that have the gene, there's people that are doing it because they absolutely have to. I like to compare it to music stuff, because everyone has like their type of music or their thing they're really into, and it doesn't necessarily make sense, and it doesn't have to, right? Like you can start to rationalize things, but like you like what you like because you like what you like, right? Like I felt like I had no choice but to be obsessed with punk rock as a kid, and it kind of sucked because there was only like 6 dudes at my school that knew what the hell I was talking about, and everyone thought, kind of like crypto, that we were a bunch of bad kids and criminals. But if they read the words to the songs that we were listening to or understood the words of the songs we were listening to, they would be so happy, right? Like I was thinking about that the other day when I was reading the words to an Op Ivy song. Like it's just like, if you listen to it and you're not into punk rock, especially, and your ears and brain aren't tuned to it, you don't understand a single word. But you compare it to like a Britney Spears song that was popular when I was like in high school or something, you would want your kid 100% of the time listening to that punk band, the kid with the mohawk and the tattoos and whatever, when mohawks and tattoos were very taboo and not cool, right? And crypto is kind of the same way. The people that fully understand it would be so happy that that this exists, right? But they don't understand it, and they judge it, and it's an interesting thing, And the people in the space, especially the early people and the people who are in it in markets like this, are in it because they truly believe in it, and they feel like there's nothing else in the world that they should be supporting more than this, right? Like they believe in freedom, they believe in this borderless utopia idea that we have, that we hope we work towards, right? Like it's pretty fun.
I'm on like all the companies that you've been involved with, like from an investor perspective. What do you think is like your biggest win?
No, I think the win, the big win in general, I think is the whole portfolio thing, and the fact that I was able to put together this business that is a kind of just fits my brain and the way I want to work. It's funny, I was going to say lifestyle, but the lifestyle is harder here than if I were to have a day job, right? Like I just work all the time and around the clock, and it's partly self-imposed, and we do that in the crypto space in general. But like I think the big win is that me, the misfit person that wants to break and change things all the time, found a world in which I can do this productively and hopefully change the world along the way. From a company perspective, right? Like individually, obviously I'm super bullish and crazy about LunarCrush, and they were one of our first deals we ever did. We had an exit with David's company, Total, which was pretty cool, and that was a cool win, but that was like a quick exit after like 3 years, which usually means it's not as big in terms of like a monetary win, but it's always a win.
Numbers? Can you share the?
I can't. I don't think we're allowed to share the numbers. It was like something like a 3 or 4x in like a 3-year time or something, and in the VC space and stuff, that's pretty great considering you write off a lot to a zero and all that. But even bigger in that it's like one of the first companies I was ever on the board of. I got to be a part of negotiating that sale to a big company and all that. And so that's pretty radical. And I got the experience, and I also got that little kind of like tick on your resume kind of cool thing, and even better for David because he was the founder of that company. And so that's really awesome. But Ownera, one of our companies, I mentioned them before, is growing tremendously. I led their last round of funding. That was supposed to be a $10 million round of funding. And then as we were closing the round, JP Morgan came in saying, we want to invest too. And we ended up reopening the round, raising double the amount of money or close to double the amount of money. JP Morgan wrote a check as big as ours, joined their board and all that fun stuff. And so that's really cool because I think that's kind of part of the Trojan horse of getting this technology into the institutional masses. They're understanding they have business models, like I mentioned earlier, that they could amplify tremendously utilizing our technology. So they're going to come in with their arms open selfishly, right? But once all of the users, everyone in the world starts utilizing this stuff for their work and their everyday lives in the workplace and for their real estate transactions and for everything else they do, it's just then normalized in all of our brains and we start using it for every day. Just like I mentioned with emails earlier, smartphones, right? Everyone thought, what a dumb idea to have emails on your phone or anything other than a phone on your phone. And then people started utilizing it for work, and people hated it at the beginning when workplaces were like, we're getting everyone BlackBerries. They were like, what the fuck? Like, so now you're going to email me at 9 o'clock at night, and I don't have a plausible deniability that I saw it, so I'm going to have to respond. Like people were freaked out at first, like, this is crazy. Now we feel naked if we don't have email, social media, and basically like a supercomputer in our pocket when we go on a hike. Like it's wild. So that's where we're going. So that for me is a big exciting one.
One more question before I let you go, and I have a million other questions. So maybe we want to do a follow up to this at some point. From earlier today, I posted a tweet saying that I was going to be chatting with you and see if people had questions. One of the questions that stood out to me was, would you in the role that you're in, fund just an idea that that hasn't been started yet? They haven't developed something meaningful. You replied saying if it's your full-time job, you already did start. Is that really how you look at it? Would you fund someone who really has done nothing but come up with an idea?
We are pride ourselves on being the first check into companies. And we do kind of deals on those companies that look like an accelerator style thing, right? Like 25 to maybe 100K, but usually like 25K to start. And we might own 5 to 10% of the company. So when you look on paper, that feels like a lot, but we also do common shares, which dramatically change what that means, because when a founder gets diluted, we get diluted the same percentage. And we align ourselves kind of like co-founders in that way. But we will be the first check in. It should be more than 2 people an idea. When people say it's just an idea, they discount the fact that they've actually done work. And in this day and age, we can come up with an idea right now. We come up with something. We can meet again tomorrow at 8 a.m. and have something to show for it, right?
Yeah.
We don't need dedicated servers and weird special technology in the way it used to be even just 15 years ago. Everything can be spun up digitally. Everything can be done on our own. And even no coding kind of prototyping and things like that can be done. And hacks can be put together by people who aren't even technical, right? So if you have an idea, you probably have done some of those things to test it out, or I'm down to help you do those things at the beginning. Even before we write a check, for a few weeks, let's explore something and test it out. And if it's going to be a full-time job, if it is going to be a real thing, and if I get along with the founder, most importantly, we're in. That's it. I've come up with ideas on Zoom calls with random people from Twitter because they DM me, they ask me a question or something. I'll be like, what do you do? Why are you asking me this question? We had our former COO was a dude in the Tezos community that just asking me questions. And then after the third question, I was like, who are you? Because he had like some avatar that wasn't a thing. He's like, oh, I'm this. I have a full-time job at this big corporate whatever, but over COVID, I just got into crypto and I wanted to learn. So I shot my shot and you actually responded. And I was like, sweet. Are you starting a company? What are you doing? He's like, no, I like working at big companies. I'm not really that guy. I'm more of an operations guy, whatever. And literally like a week before, I talked to my partner and we were saying, we need to hire like we need to hire an operations person with experience like this. And this guy literally had the exact experience that we had said. And so I was like, let's hop on a Zoom, and got to meet him and we brought him on our team. I've done the same thing where we've started companies with people like that.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of the beauty of this thing is we're not afraid to just incubate a company from scratch or even go, hey, that idea is cool. What do you think if we amplified it by doing this other thing? And then we kind of riff off of each other and you get to know how you work. That's how Ownera, that company I mentioned before, got started. Ami, the founder, came to me after one of our events. He's like, Ethereum's not going to work for security tokens. And I was like, why? Explain. And he told me, I was like, I started a company a few years ago in the crowdfunding space. It ultimately failed because the blockchain didn't exist. What do you think about this? And we literally turned a half-hour just catch-up call into like 4 hours of whiteboarding and ideas. And by the next week, we decided we're starting a company together called Ownera. And we argued about who would quit their job to be the CEO. And eventually, I actually won that argument. He became the CEO. He's still rocking it. And that company now is just raised $20 million. And this is, 4 or 5 years later. And so that's kind of, I wouldn't be the good CEO of that company now. He is a great CEO and he's running it really, really well. Me, I thrive in the getting from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, but getting it to 10, that's where the dedicated entrepreneur that owns that idea and lives in it every day takes it. So yeah, I'm down. Anybody who has an idea or anybody who's thinking of starting a company or anyone who just started, feel free to email me or go to dgb.vc or just email me Alon, ALON, at dgb.vc. Hit me up with your pitch. If I'm slow, if I don't respond or something, DM me on Twitter, show up where I show up, hang with me. It's, we can only do a certain number of deals and things. What we generally are constrained by is not usually capital or something like that. It's usually which companies can we dedicate our time to? Because for us, we don't do 1 million deals and just give money. Like that's not us. It's not our personality, but it's also just not our business model. We do fewer deals. We ask for more, but we participate, right? Like I mentioned before, I still sit 5 years in, $20 million raised. I still join the weekly management meeting for Ownera. I still text with the LunarCrush guys multiple times a week, usually multiple times a day, right? 4 years in. I was, like I said, on the board of Total negotiating the sale of that company until the very last moment, right? Like we're just kind of a part of the founding team practically, right? Not actually full time, but we're there in the weeds with them. So that's our constraint. So sometimes I gotta see and meet and learn, do I want to be in the room with this person for the next 10 years? And that's by showing up to events. And that doesn't mean like in person, but like virtually. Like I'll probably restart doing like a weekly hangout podcasty thing again, like I was doing with Blockchain and Booze for a few years. And follow me on those things, hang out with me on those things, DM me. I participate the most probably on Twitter of any of the social networks and stuff. So just hang, and that's the way to do it.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for coming on. This was a great conversation. We definitely have to.
Anytime. I really appreciate being on, and thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.